Welcome back. Vice President JD Vance and I spoke on a wide range of topics, from culture across the globe, mass migration, modern-day Democrats, Zohran Mamdani, Gavin Newsom, and, of course, college football. Here's part 2 of my exclusive interview with JD Vance. You spent a lot of time talking about Europe, the migration crisis of Germany, of England. You've talked about free speech. Why is it so important for you to focus on Europe?
Well, I think in some ways the problems of Europe mirror the problems of America. And anything that I've said about Europe, I've said 10 times and is even as true or more true in the United States of America. We, of course, had a wide open southern border under Joe Biden. I think the Europeans have got to learn the hard lessons. What happens is you get higher crime, you get less cultural cohesion, you get more just problems that come from importing millions and millions of low-wage foreigners into your country. The Europeans have got to learn that lesson in the same way that I think the United States had to learn that lesson. You've seen, in the same way that the Biden administration went after social media companies to censor their fellow citizens, you've seen the very same thing happen in Europe, where rather than debate ideas, you have certain European leaders who would rather censor their fellow citizens. So I think fundamentally there's so much cultural similarity between us and Europe. Obviously, the United States was born out of a European country, the United Kingdom. I think it's important to recognize those cultural similarities, and importantly, what's happening in Europe does affect the United States and vice versa. And so I think it's important for us to step back and say, look, the West, right? That's Europe and America together. We got too comfortable with open borders. We got too comfortable with censorship. And I think the president has shown that if you go in the other direction, if you close down your borders and actually give free speech to your people, you can really energize the culture in these countries.
Europe is the bedrock of Western civilization.
Right.
It's the foundation of Western civilization. And that seems to be not just questioned, but under threat. Have you seen the story out of England where the English flag has simultaneously become controversial and patriotic? Some in that country see it as a sign of protest, others see it as a sign of patriotism. And it's a little reflected at what's happening here in America.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, again, so much of what happens in Europe happens in America and vice versa. You know, sometimes we're on the leading edge of a trend, sometimes they're on the leading edge of a trend. But I remember back in the crazy BLM summer of 2020, I had a buddy of mine say, you know, I was going to put the American flag out today, but I'm worried that some BLM person is going to ransack my house or you know, come and vandalize it in some way because they see the American flag somehow as this controversial symbol. It's not a controversial symbol. Nothing should be less controversial than the American flag. It's the one thing that, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, should unite us all together. We should all love our country, be proud of our country. So again, some of these trends where you have Americans worried about flying the American flag because they think their house is going to get vandalized, first of all, that's crazy. Second of all, you see the same things happening in Europe, and I think we just have to be on guard against this stuff. It's okay to be proud of your country. It's in fact a good thing to be proud of your country, and we should push back against the crazies who say we should be so ashamed of our culture and of our heritage that we shouldn't be willing to fly a flag. It's craziness. We got to call that craziness out. I'd encourage our European friends to follow suit.
You brought up how interconnected every single one of these problems are, from culture to the economy. But if I could say to you, you could snap your fingers, politics be damned, and you could fix one problem at the root of all of this in America.
Oh, man.
You forwarded mass migration, you forwarded immigration, you talk about the family unit, but what would be the root unit you would snap your fingers and fix?
It's probably the migration problem. And I think, again, the President of the United States has shown in just a few short months what you can do. We've got illegal border crossings effectively at zero. We've got net migration negative in this country for the first time. And why do I say that? First of all, I think it's very hard to feel you know, like you're part of the same country when your leadership brings in tens of millions of people uninvited. So that sense of shared American identity, the sense that we're part of the same American family, I think that gets destroyed when you import 20, 30 million people without any democratic check on it. So that's number one. Number two, I think it's terrible for the wages of working class people. You see this in every place where you bring in low-wage immigrants. It's bad for the wages of Americans who just want to work a good job and earn a good wage in their communities. And the third thing that I point out is crime and drugs. drugs. We know that while most, of course, even illegal immigrants are not bringing in fentanyl, they are used by the cartels as vectors to traffic this illegal poison. And so it makes the opioid problem worse, it makes wages worse, and it makes our sense of common American identity worse. I think the migration issue really is the root of what went wrong during the Biden administration. By the way, it's why the Democrats are so obsessed with it. If you ask yourself, like, what does the modern National Democratic Party believe in? What do they fight most aggressively for? They fight most aggressively to continue to flood the United States with millions and millions of low-wage immigrants. The fact that that is the reason for existing for the Democratic Party should make all Americans sort of step back and say, what the hell is wrong with these people?
Zohran Mamdani is the leading candidate for mayor in New York City. Yes, your Mima, by the way, I think was a lifelong Democrat.
She was.
What do you think it says about the left that Zohran Mamdani is a leading candidate for a big political office as a Democrat? And what would your Mima say about modern Democrats?
I think Mama would say this is crazy. I think that she would say the modern Democratic Party doesn't represent her at all. By the way, there are two things that Mama, yes, she was a lifelong Democrat. She believed in standing up for working people. She believed in good wages for a good job. She was her husband was a union Democrat for 40 years, and that's really where it came from. But one, she thought politicians ought to have a sense of humor. Democrats, the one thing they should learn from President Trump is to laugh at themselves a little bit. They don't have to be so serious. They don't have to get offended at everything. Sometimes it's actually a good thing to have a sense of humor about our political process. And the second thing is, Mama, she was a Democrat who loved this country and felt gratitude for this country. She had multiple relatives who served in World War II, who served in World War I. She remembered that war like it was yesterday. She would tell me about World War II and her brother and her dad going off to fight in the Pacific. Does Mamdani, when you hear him speak, is this a man who feels gratitude for the United States of America? Is this a man who feels grateful for all of the opportunities, the incredible bounty of this country? I don't know the guy, but my sense is he's had a very good life in this country. It would be nice for him to occasionally show a sense of gratitude instead of just attacking the United States for all of its problems.
You bring up humor. Gavin Newsom sure thinks he's a comedian these days on social media, and so does much of the left. His polling numbers have gone way up since he started mimicking President Trump on social media.
Yeah.
What do you make of Governor Newsom?
I make of Governor Newsom that you said he's mimicking Donald Trump, and I think that's exactly right. The lesson of Donald Trump, the lesson of President Trump in American politics is you've got to be authentic to yourself. And when I see Gavin Newsom trying to act like Donald Trump, that's the opposite of authenticity. He's not trying to be Gavin Newsom, whoever that is. He's trying to be a fake carbon copy of Donald Trump, and it just doesn't work. You can't mimic the king. You can't mimic the master. You ought to just go and be yourself. And I think that the American people would like that a lot more than a cheap imitation of the President of the United States.
All right, lastly, on a lighter note, I'm disappointed to see your blue tie. I, as a specific rebuke to you and the Ohio State Buckeyes today, chose a burnt orange tie. This weekend, we have number 1 versus number 2, the University of Texas versus Ohio State. Let's just revisit what has to be one of your most embarrassing moments as vice president. I can't even imagine. What is it like to drop the national championship trophy?
It's awful. Let me tell you, it's awful. And my friends gave me hell for it. And it's one of those moments I'll never live down. I didn't break it, though. It was made of solid, good steel, I guess.
I did analyze it play by play.
No, so I could give you a whole backstory about it. I didn't know that there's... So it's not the base fell off. The base is meant to come off.
Right.
You're not meant to lift it up by the base, which is the mistake that I made. You're supposed to just take the trophy out of the base. So anyway, that was the first error that led to a series of problems. But I looked at the line yesterday, and I think Ohio State were 12-point dogs to Texas.
No, you're favored. I believe you're favored by 3. You're at home. You're number 2.
Okay,
we got to look.
Okay, I thought
we get
somebody sent me a line. That's what I said, because we're in Columbus. Somebody sent me a line that had us minus 11.5, and I was like, that sounds crazy to me. I think it's going to be a good game. You guys have a hell of a team. Obviously, Archie Manning has good genes, as the president would say. So hopefully he doesn't have too good of a day in Ohio Stadium.
You have a prediction? I have one.
Oh man,
Texas Longhorns by 1 million.
34-23 Buckeyes.
All right. I can't wait to see you after.
That's a confident prediction.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.